For Oregon's 2026 class, getting Jared Curtis, 5-star number 1 quarterback, might be even more important than you think.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Plenty to get to today. NIL, spring thoughts, all coming up on today's show. And KJ Evans is back. That is great news. You know what else is great news? This episode's brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So, Jared Curtis is the biggest recruiting target that Oregon has right now. He is the number 1 quarterback in the class of 2026, and ordinarily, that would be a pretty notable guy to be going after. I'm looking at how Oregon's recruiting is trending at the moment and think there could be an even bigger element to landing Curtis. So, Ryder Lyons is, of course, the other quarterback that Oregon's going after in 2026, 5-star, who is has an LDS background. He's going on a mission after 26, so he's more like a 27 guy of sorts. Brian Smith doesn't think that Oregon would be able to land both. That would be a coup d'etat in the quarterback recruiting cycle. But Lyons is someone who is being heavily recruited by USC. BYU is making a serious push. Michigan's getting themselves into the fold. It's really competitive. For Jared Curtis, of course, it's just Oregon and Georgia. But the reason I say Curtis could be even more important is sometimes in recruiting classes, not all the time, and Oregon hasn't necessarily done this yet, but when you land a quarterback, that can flock other recruits to your class. He can become, as much as any player, I think a quarterback, a recruiter that helps out the staff, that goes to other guys and says, hey, come be a part of what we're building up here. Hey, come join Oregon's recruiting class. You want to come and play with me? Yeah, I think we can do great things together. That might be the next big domino that falls for Oregon, because let's be honest about it. It's been quiet, really quiet. Not everybody is like that right now. Arizona State, they're buzzing. USC is the hottest recruiting team in the country. They're going to try and flip Oregon 5-star offensive tackle commit Cody Green along with Texas. They'll get visits from him come June. So Oregon's class, which currently sits at 8 players for the class of 2026, I expect it to be significantly bigger. Like when May rolls around, post-spring, I think the spring game is going to be, of course, a huge part of the recruiting calendar, as it always is. I think Oregon's class this year is going to be bigger than last year's. Last year, it felt like it was more, quality over quantity of sort. Not that Oregon ever recruits a low quality of player, but that they were going after a couple of really high-profile guys like DeCorian Moore, number 1 wide receiver. And they were, of course, able to land him and a bunch of other big-time recruits. But it would make sense after taking in fewer than 20 players last cycle if they push that number up towards certainly over 20. I'd imagine 25 is kind of the range. But would Jared Curtis be the start of snowballing all of that? He's going to commit in less than a month. May 5th is his commitment date. So we'll wait and see. But I think Curtis right now feels like the most likely Oregon big name commit in the coming weeks or months. Not everyone has a specific commitment date set like Jared Curtis does, but the 5-star offensive tackles Oregon's going after both have crystal balls to go elsewhere. No one's committed anywhere. There's a long way to go in the cycle, of course, but Jackson Cantwell, according to 24/7, has a medium confidence crystal ball to Miami, and Emmanuel Iheanacho, who tweeted back at Tredarian Ball, Oregon's 2026 running back recruit, who has shut down his recruitment and is locked into the Ducks 100%, which is great because I love Tredarian Ball's film. They just had a little interplay on Twitter quickly. Contrast that with the fact that I've heard for weeks now that Iheanacho is more than likely going to wind up at Maryland. He's a 5-star, but Maryland has made serious NIL investments, and he's from that area, so he might wind up being a Terrapin. I don't know. But those are kind of the heaviest hitters. Brandon Arrington's a potential 2-way player at corner and receiver, Travis Hunter type that Oregon's been in the mix for as well. But USC's going after him really hard. Those are kind of the biggest names that I've tracked for the last couple of weeks and continue to monitor for Oregon on the recruiting trail. So if Oregon doesn't get Jared Curtis, but they've made a pitch for him in the coming weeks, I wonder where their chances would be to land Ryder Lyons. And then it feels right now, subject to change, of course, because it's recruiting, it's 24/7, 365 business, that Cantwell and Iheanacho are both trending elsewhere for now. So yeah, I think Curtis could be a superstar at quarterback for the Ducks, but just from a recruiting class standpoint, might be even bigger than we think. Just something I'm poking around in my head. And I know you guys have thoughts as well. If you want those thoughts answered here on the show, when you submit the form of a question, English is hard. My brain is mush right now, but you can do that. YouTube comments, Twitter, become a Locked On Ducks insider, all of that good stuff. Duck2081A sends in this one. Recruiting thought. Does Lanning's past reluctance to play freshmen play a part in this year's recruiting? He's stacked 2 classes that have yet to see meaningful time for most, just a few, and don't get me started on portal dudes. It has to put doubts in recruits' minds, and a negative pitch from other programs must show growth this year in playing young guys. So you kind of contradicted yourself there at the end. Got to show growth this year in playing young guys. But are you talking about true freshmen? Or are you talking about guys who have stuck around from the past 2 recruiting classes who are ready to have their opportunity? A guy like Roderick Pleasant, or a guy like Ife Obadegu, or just keep going down the list of players on both sides of the ball, or Janoris Wilson along the offensive line. AJ Pugliano at tight end. I heard Drew Maringer, the tight end coach, talk about him and his press availability the other day. Not sure exactly what you mean there, but to your fundamental question, no. I don't really understand where this kind of narrative comes from. I see it pop up all the time. Well, Dan doesn't play a lot of true freshmen. Who's playing a bunch of true freshmen? Which coach, which staff, which team? Who's going out there and, we got 22 starters and 9 of them are true freshmen? Nobody that's expecting to make the playoff every year. Programs that are maybe resetting and building for the future could be doing that. But I have seen true freshmen make an impact in some form or another in every year that Dan Lanning has been Oregon's head coach. That's just been an absolute fact. Now, the level of that impact has varied, of course, but I think the relative low number of transfer departures contrasted with the sometimes difficult path to playing time for, these guys who have been in the program for the last couple of years, who we all want to see develop and get a chance because we follow their recruitment, see their potential. We know they've been working really hard to have that opportunity. At the end of the day, Lanning's going to do what he feels gives Oregon the best chance to win. I just have never felt the way that some people do that. Well, he just doesn't play young guys ever. Like, no, he's said for a while, if you're good enough, you're old enough. Now, that can just be coach speak and doesn't actually mean anything. But on the flip side, I've seen plenty of young guys play. He walked in 2022. Jalil Florence and Josh Connerly were both heavy rotation guys on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. Like, if you're good enough, you're old enough. But the way that Oregon recruits makes it so that a lot of freshmen aren't good enough right away and have to get better. But most of them stick around because I think they understand what the plan is. But to your question, no, I don't think that's why Oregon doesn't have, 21 commits or 23, whatever it's at for USC right now. I think some of it is timing. I think the spring game is going to increase the likelihood that they pick up a couple of players in that time. Oregon still has a top 10 class, by the way. It's been as high as number 1 in this cycle. It's right now sitting at number 8, according to 24/7 Sports. I don't expect it to ever fall outside of the top 10. I do think that, there's 1 or 2 big names that are out there that I think Oregon's going to land, or that at least they have a really good chance to, and I'd like to see them get those sorts of guys. But I don't think that there's, any of this negative recruiting coming from other programs, and that's just going to drive Oregon's recruiting down. Like, most guys don't expect to play as a true freshman because it's not that reasonable of an expectation. So if you disagree, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all that sort of stuff. How does NIL factor into all of this? Thoughts on spring football, and another thought On to Corey and more, all coming up right after we talk about game time. There's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute MLB showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA matchup, but finding great seats at a great price, that used to be a challenge until game time. It's not a challenge anymore. Game time makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer, and with their all-in pricing, you see the total cost up front. No surprises at checkout. I've used Game Time to go to the Big Ten Championship game, to go see a comedy event, Shane Gillis, up in Salt Lake City. I found the process incredibly easy. I love the all-in pricing feature. The tickets get delivered to my phone. I didn't have any problems whatsoever. So I endorse Game Time, absolutely, because I'm 2 for 2 on Game Time. No, actually, scratch that. I'm 3 for 3 on Game Time events in my life. Pretty good batting average right there. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Always love a good second segment sip. It's essential. Absolutely essential. I want to start the second segment with another thought I had on Corey and more. So, when setting preseason expectations for 2025's number one wide receiver and incoming true freshman, speaking of true freshman, how much will he play? Not as much as he will as a junior. Kayvon Thibodeau is pretty inarguably, I'd say, with DeAnthony Thomas, the most successful true freshman 5-star recruits that have come through Oregon. I don't remember specifically how Haloti Ngata and Jonathan Stewart did in their first year off the top of my head. I imagine they were also really good. But in kind of the modern era of Oregon football, those would definitely be the two guys. Kayvon Thibodeau had 24 tackles, 9 sacks, 5 TFLs, in addition to the 9 sacks, because that's how normal people would. That's how I would stat that. Anyway, 3 passes defended and a forced fumble in 14 games played, which is unconscionably good. 9 sacks, by the way, was the most he had in a season in his career. The COVID year probably saw to that, and then an injury in 2021. But 9 sacks is pretty darn good. What's the equivalent of 24 tackles, 9 sacks, 5 other TFLs, and 3 passes defended as a wide receiver? I don't know exactly how to make that one-to-one comparison. I do look. I mean, I guess I can try, because I brought the numbers up, of course. None of you made me do that. I just decided to do it. So, 24 tackles, not a huge number. 9 sacks and 5 TFL, that's pretty big. You're averaging 1 play made behind the line of scrimmage per game. I'd say this is the equivalent to Corey and Moore having 800 to 1,000 yards. So we'll call it 900. 900 yards and 8 touchdowns. That's what that is. I don't expect him to do that this year. I think Corey and Moore hits at least 500 yards. Hey, I'm curious what you guys all think. So let me know your thoughts and comments below and whatnot. But 9 sacks, 5 TFL. Man, that's something. That is something. But that's the only recruit who was higher rated than Corey and Moore. So we'll see how he fits into the receiving corps. But as I talked about yesterday, I think he's coming to a perfect situation with all the veterans around him. He doesn't have to do anything right away. He can just grow and develop pretty naturally, and I think he'll be great. So Nick sent in this question. In recruiting with Oregon, most of what you hear is, well, they have the largest NIL. If NIL disappeared tomorrow, do you think Oregon could still consistently get top 5 classes? Is Oregon's brand big enough nationally to support current levels? Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, I believe that. NIL was not a big thing in the class of 2021 when Mario Cristobal and company were still in charge, and they pulled in the number 6 class in the country. Chip Kelly hates recruiting. He is currently the offensive coordinator for the Raiders after winning a national championship at Ohio State, after being the head coach at UCLA. Why? Hates recruiting, doesn't like it, has never liked it. That's never been a big secret. Still, in the Chip Kelly era, Oregon consistently, with a coach who doesn't like to recruit, they consistently pulled in top 15 classes. I think they might have only had one that cracked the top 10. They might not even have had that. But again, kind of 12 to 15 was the range where those recruiting classes sat most often. So yeah, if you take out NIL, you remove a factor where Oregon is tier 1 from a recruiting standpoint in college football. 100%. You would take that out. It's something that benefits Oregon. Are they tier 2 in every other metric that matters to recruits? Ability to compete for championships, just won the Big Ten, several conference championships, expected to be a perennial playoff team now that it's expanded to 12 teams year in and year out. Is their brand out there? Yeah, they have an incredibly identifiable brand. Are they willing to go the extra mile for whatever you would need with facilities, gear, swag, whatever recruits want outside of NIL? Can they develop relationships? Yeah, that much is incredibly clear. I still think the best example of that this year is a transfer player in Dylan Thieneman, who reportedly turned down higher dollar figure NIL offers in the SEC to go play at Oregon. You have to have NIL to be competitive. You cannot just have NIL and pull in these sorts of classes. Otherwise, you know who would have top 5 recruiting classes every year? SMU. But Oregon is not just NIL. They're very good at it. They've got plenty of it, and that is great. And they should be all in, because if you're not, it's the money ball. Adapt or die, Grady. Adapt or die. I'd rather they adapt. But SMU's collective is one of the 5 most valuable in all of college football. Where are their top 5 classes? They can recruit well. They will continue to recruit better. It's about more than just NIL. So yeah, if you took away NIL, which you're of course not going to do, Oregon could still pull top 5 recruiting classes. No doubt in my mind. Not saying it'd be easy or that it'd happen every year. I don't know that it's going to happen every year right now. It doesn't, right? They've done it twice in a row. Doesn't mean they're going to again. So I think they're going to be just fine. Whatever college sports has thrown at Oregon, they've always been adaptive. They've always been at the cutting edge. Facilities, uniforms, NIL, whatever. Whatever is needed, they're always right there because they want to win. And I appreciate that as a Mariners fan. So this one came in from MBB311. If you could have one person from each the offensive and defensive side of the ball to come on the show and talk spring training / season expectations, who would they be and why? Speaking of baseball, spring training, it's a baseball term. Side note, who would give the fans the most insight as to where the team is at? Answer, nobody. To who would give the most insight? I think every player has been well coached by Dan Lanning and likely the communication staff at Oregon on how to talk without saying a whole heck of a lot. That is the modus operandi for Dan Lanning in particular. I think the rest of the staff, frankly, give you probably more than Lanning does on a consistent basis. My not so hot take, because I think Lanning's kind of an introvert who is not always super comfortable, or usually isn't that comfortable talking to the press with people looking at you and cameras on you and whatnot. But I also think that he likes to control the information, not put a bunch of stuff out there that, he doesn't feel like helps his team or help him run his program. So with regards to your question, who'd be the best players to have on the show? Certainly Dante Moore. I mean, just the guy who's expected to be a starting quarterback. Yeah, that'd probably be the guy who'd be most interesting to talk to. There's also a great interview out there with DeCorian Moore. He went on the Pivot podcast, I think it was, with Ryan Clark and a couple other guys. And he had some interesting things to say on there. But I was kind of surprised to see him on there. I was like, oh, that's awesome. But yeah, he's that high profile of a guy. Defensively, probably either Thieneman, whose work ethic seems to get praised every single time it comes up, and Bryce Betcher, who's got to be a big leader on the defense. Talked about him a lot on Friday's show if you want more thoughts on the Ducks starting middle linebacker here. So yeah, those would be my guys. But good question in there. Good question. Another good piece of news. I'm still waiting on the big piece of news, but another piece of news I'm really excited to see. KJ Evans is back. Let's not spin this in any way. This is good news. This is a player who played his best basketball at the end of the year. I mean, it was the Dana Altman trajectory, quite frankly. As KJ Evans' play rose and fell throughout the course of the year, Oregon's wins and losses came and went. He played really well at the start of the year, and Oregon was winning a lot of games. He wasn't playing as much, wasn't playing as well. Oregon struggled. Then he picked it up, and suddenly Oregon started playing well. Now, that's not to say that he was the driving force behind Oregon's success. He was, however, a significant contributor, and it was not a total coincidence that when he played well, Oregon tended to do it. Very rarely did KJ Evans have a good game and Oregon lose. So, the former five-star recruit will be going into his third year as a Duck, along with Jackson Shellstad. They, of course, came in together in the 2024 recruiting cycle. Yeah, because they were true freshmen a year ago. And, basketball is just trickier because it's like the 23-24 season and the 24 class, you know what I mean. Or, no, they would have been 2023 recruits. Yeah, because they played in the three. See, I get tripped up by it. You know what I'm talking about. These are true juniors, KJ Evans and Jackson Shellstad, who came in together with Mookie Cook, who got injured, never quite fully recovered, didn't have the ability, I think, to develop enough of an offensive game. He transferred. He's down at San Francisco now. So I think that for Oregon to have Evans back is, again, a known commodity, and you only have two of those on your team. Yes, they brought in Devon Pryor, the small forward transfer from Texas, 6'7", athletic, not a great three-point shooter right now, but has got a lot of offensive potential. I am intrigued in what they have there. I am intrigued in Jamari Phillips, who I think can be a 6'3" version of Keyshawn Bartholomew. Instant offense. Put him in the game, and he's there to score the ball. He can shoot the three. He's a tough shot maker. That was the book on him coming out of high school. I mean, plenty of potential there. He's going to have to take a step forward. But again, that's not a known commodity. I know what KJ Evans is. I know what Jackson Shellstad is. Both guys should be taking steps forward this year, or next year, I should say, because there are areas where they can improve. Evans more so than Shellstad. So KJ Evans' stats this past year, he averaged 6 points, 4.5 rebounds, just over half a block a game, 46% from the field. Number one area, the number one area where I would like to see KJ Evans improve. Man, if he could get over 30% from three, it would do wonders for Oregon offensively. Wonders. You could put 5 on the court, depending on who they start at shooting guard and small forward next year, that can all shoot the three to 30% or higher clip. Biddle's 33%. Shellstad was 36, 37% this past year, which was up from his freshman season. If he takes another jump, oh man. But he's a lethal shooter. Evans doesn't need to be a mid to upper 30s guy from beyond the arc, but it always felt like a surprise and a welcome one when KJ Evans hit a three. Each of his first 2 years, 27%. Now, here's where I'll defend him, because I don't think this is a guy who struggles with work ethic at all or spending time in the gym. I think that he, with Brandon Angel's entrance via the portal from Stanford, which was absolutely the right move for the Ducks this past season, and Evans eventually started outplaying him as the year went on, which is kind of what I see for DeCorian Moore. You've got Gary Bryant Jr. in there. Maybe you move Evan Stewart to the slot a little bit more often, and they play more at the start. And then as DeCorian Moore gets more acclimated, by the end of the year, he's playing more because he's got a higher ceiling. So Evans was outplaying Angel for the second half of the season, played more minutes than him, was in the game down in all the games down the stretch, and did a lot of really, really good things. I love what he does defensively, but where I'll defend him with his three-point shooting not taking a step forward, he played fewer minutes per game this past season than he did as a freshman. Now, should he have been playing 22.5 minutes a game as a freshman? No. He was, because both N'Faly Dante and Nate Bittle were injured. So he had to step in and play the 5. He did so very admirably. But his scoring went down. His rebounding was down a little bit. Didn't block as many shots. But he just wasn't playing as much. But you look at his numbers over the last month of the season when he was seeing far more regular playing time, and 20-plus minute playing time games were not a rare occurrence. He started to really, really find his groove. And the biggest thing he has to do is become a better three-point shooter. Okay, so that's area number 1. Area number 2, he has got to figure out how to get shots off and how he needs to study Brandon Angel and the footwork that he put on display over the course of his college career. If he can work that into his game, this suddenly goes from someone who's a 6 to 7 point a game scorer to a 10 to 12 point a game scorer. And guess what? Right now, hard to see him not being Oregon's starting power forward. And I'd like him to be. I want him to develop into that guy. But the reason I think Dana Altman wanted to bring in Brandon Angel rather than start Evans as a true sophomore is that Evans post-game, he's got plenty of potential. He can finish well with both hands. He's big, physical. He's not going to get pushed around. He's got solid touch, I would say. He doesn't have a straight hook that he can put in, but he knows how to use the glass. His post moves are not nearly as refined as Angel's. He can't score down there on his own. When he just goes to back somebody down, that resulted in a turnover more often, it felt, than it resulted in him making a shot. Now, he is also uniquely athletic at 6'9", 220, to where he can be a slashing and a cutting four. And I would love to see him improve his handle and his post moves to help round out his offensive game. But he has got to figure out how to be a low post scorer when he doesn't get the ball from someone else, whether that's off a missed shot or a pass from Nate Bittle in the post. And he's good at that stuff. That's awesome. I love it. That's a big part of his game right now. Okay. That's incredibly valuable. I just watched Houston make a run to the national championship game, mostly by shooting bricks and getting the offensive rebound. I'm here for it. I'm here for those sorts of guys. He's got to be able to score in one-on-one situations. Has to. That's the next step for him. Because defensively, no notes. I have no notes. He is a good shot blocker. He's a good individual defender. You go back to the Washington game at the end of the regular season. He fails to give Oregon the lead with free throws at one end, comes right back at the other end, and makes the stop on Great Osobor. Phenomenal defense. Phenomenal. Gets the game to overtime. Oregon goes on to win. So I think that Evans defensively is a finished product, and he really was coming into this year. He is so elite at that end of the floor. I love the tandem that he and Bittle create defensively for the Ducks. Bittle's got to put on a little weight, get a little more physical, as I've talked about, but those two together, that's as good of a shot blocking tandem and just overall defensive duo as you're finding in the country. They are really good. Really good. Where they can improve, Bittle's offense is great. KJ Evans, not as great. If he can get there, closer, not to where Bittle is, to where, he puts up 20-point games regularly. Nope, that's not what would be needed unless Bittle doesn't come back. But that's the next piece of news that I'm looking for Oregon basketball is Nate Bittle. The next piece of development I want from KJ Evans, figure out how to score in one-on-one situations. He does that, you've got a special player on your hands. But this third segment for my everydayers out there, it's going to be, I don't know why I was knocking on the table. I'm just anxious about this. Nate Bittle's got to come back. Unless Dana's really got something cooking, unless he's got a huge trick up his sleeve, Nate Bittle's got to come back. But if you have a core trio of Shelstad, Evans, and Bittle, the floor for this team for the third year is the same result the last 2 years, where you get to the round of 32. That's what it feels like to me. It'll be the second year those guys have played together the entire season. They, of course, know each other really well. This is a great piece of news. Great. I wasn't worried about him going to the NBA draft. I was wondering whether he'd hit the portal. Well, he's coming back, and I think he's Oregon's starting power forward. So you got two starters and maybe two bench guys, maybe a starter on the roster right now. Lots to be done. Get Nate Bittle back. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.